I'm not going to waste your time. If there's one book that I recommend to overcome worrying, overthinking, these like negative thoughts, it's called The Worry Trick. The Worry Trick. And basically what this book does, it teaches you how to deal with those thoughts. Because first, you have to acknowledge them. And then secondly, this is going to be interesting, you humor the thought. Now, first, how do you determine whether or not something is a worrisome thought? Well, you ask yourself two questions. One, is it truthful? Is it helpful? Because if a thought is neither truthful or helpful, then it's irrational, right? It's not a helpful thought. It's not going to benefit you in any way. So you can acknowledge that as a worrisome thought. So once you find those worrisome thoughts, then what you do is you humor the thought. So what a lot of people do is they get in these arguments with their thoughts. They're like, oh, what if everyone hates me? This is how the argument goes in their mind. Well, what if everyone hates me? Well, they probably don't hate me because, I have friends and I doubt that they would just hate me. And then, what if they do, right? So you'll never win this argument because this what if thought process could go on forever because you're never 100% certain. You could always question your own beliefs, your own memories. So that what if thought process will always win the argument. So what you do is you humor the thought. One way you could do that is you could kind of mock it, right? Because what's really important is not that you have these thoughts, it's how you respond to them. So if you have this thought like, oh, what if everyone hates me? You could just mock it and be like, oh, what if everyone hates me? And then you just continue doing what you're doing because now you're not getting stuck in this argument with yourself. You're just dealing with the thought as if it's like an annoying heckler, right? If you were a stand-up comedian and you had a heckler, would you sit there and like argue with them for the whole rest of the show? No, you have a show to perform, so you have to continue on. And I know this because I do stand-up comedy sometimes. And if there is a heckler, I've never really had like a real heckler, but if there was one, I wouldn't sit there and argue with them. I would just kind of like try and make a joke about it, and then move on with the show, right? Same thing goes with your life. You try and move on with the show. It's a heckler. This worrisome thought that you have is just a heckler in your mind. That's how you kind of have to treat it. There's other tools and techniques in the book, but that's what I found most helpful. The second book is called Soundtracks. And I don't remember if I read this book when I was dealing with a lot of overthinking thoughts or if it just helped reaffirm some beliefs that I already had. But regardless, I think it's a helpful book because basically the argument of this book is to treat your thoughts as if they're a soundtrack, right? So there's certain like automatic negative thoughts that everyone has. Everyone has some thoughts that are not going to be beneficial to you. But what you could do is you could think of that as kind of like background music. So like if you go to the mall and they're playing like terrible music, then you don't have to pay attention to it. It doesn't have to change your decisions, right? What you could do is you could put in your own headphones and put in your own music, right? So it's like you can play positive music while the negative music is still there. So you can't turn off the mall's music, right? But you could put in your own headphones. And that's kind of the analogy with like positive thoughts versus negative thoughts. You insert positive thoughts by being grateful for things. So like if you consistently were like, oh, I'm going to gratitude journal and I'm going to write down what I'm grateful for, like 3 things that I'm grateful for. And you find those things, it's kind of like inserting those positive thoughts into your mind. It's kind of like putting in headphones when there's a lot of background music. And I think that thinking of thoughts in this way could be really helpful because it's not, a lot of times we think like our thoughts have to control every single thing we do, but you don't have to follow your thoughts. Like you can have the thought of doubting yourself to post videos of thinking people don't like you, but that if it doesn't control your decisions, then it's not going to make that big of a difference in your life because you have way more thoughts than you have actions. And ultimately, we are judged by our actions, not our thoughts. So even if you have these negative thoughts, you can just think of them as background music. And I think that could be really helpful. I actually don't know if that headphones analogy was in the book, but that's kind of my interpretation of it. I think that's the best way for me to describe the idea of soundtracks. Okay, and the third book, and this is specific to if you're having like really intense anxiety, like a lot of doubt, a lot of overthinking, and it's really holding you back, then this is the book I would recommend. It's called Dare, The New Way to End Anxiety. And this is also if you're having panic attacks. So it's called Dare, The New Way to End Anxiety and Panic Attacks. And basically, this is like a step-by-step guide of how to overcome like intense anxiety, panic attacks, anxiety attacks. Like this is a very good book for that. And the author of this book, he's actually not even a psychologist. He is just like a coach. Like I think he was going through panic attacks himself, and then he decided to like coach people on this method that he's using. And it seems to be pretty effective. It seems to have been helping a lot of people. I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not going to say to definitely go do this. Obviously, go to therapy, go see someone if you need to. Basically, the premise of this book is that there's a new approach to dealing with anxiety, and it's the DARE response, which is an acronym. The D is for diffuse the thought, the A is for allow it to happen, the R is run towards the feeling, and the E is engage in what you were doing before. So essentially, it's like an acronym for people to be able to sit through panic attacks, because panic attacks, anxiety attacks are uncomfortable feelings. Because when you run away from a panic attack or an anxiety attack, then you reinforce in your mind that that is the right response to panic, which it shouldn't be. The right response to panic is being able to deal with the uncomfortable feeling and act in a way that makes the situation a little bit better. So I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a licensed therapist. So if you are dealing with panic attacks, talk to someone, and while you're talking to someone, maybe suggest reading this book as well. So those are the 3 books. And listen, I also think that like reframing your ability to overthink could be beneficial too, because overthinking and creativity are pretty similar. Like overthinking and creativity, they start with the same 2 words, like a worrisome thought, an anxious thought, and a creative thought. Starts with the same 2 words. What if? And I think that once I started making content, it gave me a way to focus all of these thoughts that I have. I'm like, let me use all my ability to have all these thoughts to my advantage. And that's when I started posting videos, and that's completely changed my life. So another thing I wanted to say is like, you might just be a creative person or someone who has a desire to like really pursue something meaningful, and maybe something's holding you back from doing that. And if you were to do that, that could help a lot, because it keeps your mind busy. Because at the end of the day, we're problem solvers. Like human beings are problem solvers. We want to work on something that we can solve. So if you have something to work on, at the very least, it'll distract your mind. And at the very most, it may completely change your life. So make sure you have something that you're passionate about, that you're working on, and that'll at least help a little bit for your overthinking ability. And listen, I'm not saying it's easy. It's not easy to get over these worrisome overthinking thoughts. But even though it won't be easy, it will be worth it. Life's not easy, but it's worth it. Take care.